What's going on? Welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Lucas and Tyler recording 4 p.m. Central Time here on Wednesday, September 28th. You all will hopefully be getting this. You will be getting this, not hopefully. You will be getting this on Thursday. Before we even jump in, make sure you're following us on all of our socials for even more content outside of the podcast. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook, YouTube, and the good old TikTok. And hey, if you want to join a community full of league winners, make sure you join our Chalkboard. That is down in the description of the YouTube video or audio podcast you are listening to. Tyler, I didn't let you hop in much at the beginning here. We got a full show, though. You're going to be talking plenty during the episode here. I don't want you to fear. We got a Week 4 preview. We got some news and notes. But first, it's the middle of the week. Let's discuss some buy low, sell high candidates. This is the week, I think, to truly capitalize on buy lows and sell highs in your league. This is the time last year where people are panicking on Jonathan Taylor. 2 years ago, they were panicking on Derrick Henry, right? Every year we get to this point where there are people panicking on studs. Now, you and I don't really necessarily talk about any studs, but we could throw like an Austin Eckler, a Najee Harris into this conversation. But I think there are legitimate concerns around those players. So, Tyler, going into Week 4, who is your buy low candidate of the week?
Well, first, howdy, folks. I'm back. I'm back after a one-episode hiatus.
Yes, our rock was gone. Our consistent piece was gone. It felt so absent without you.
Yeah, it wasn't the same. I'll be honest.
It wasn't the same.
That was so that was so arrogant of me. Yeah, it just suffered without me.
It's just me. I just talked into a microphone for 45 minutes.
You did good. You did good.
My room afterwards, and I asked my wife. I said, "How'd you enjoy listening to me talk to myself for 45 minutes?" And she's like, "Yeah, you just talked to yourself for 45 minutes." I'm like, thanks.
I can keep myself company.
Yeah, right. No problem.
Yeah. So anyway, on to buy low, sell highs. My buy low is actually the guy that kind of outshined Justin Jefferson last Sunday. It's Adam Thielen. And I think the game against Detroit is actually one of the best things that happened for Minnesota's offense, at least, because it was 2 weeks where we saw no Adam Thielen, no KJ Osborne, and everyone's like, where'd they go? And what we noticed in Minnesota's game against Detroit is Detroit played a lot of single high, or they played a lot of double coverage on Justin Jefferson. And I need to clarify this for people, because when people hear they doubled Justin Jefferson, everyone instantly thinks of like the classic photo with Calvin Johnson on the goal line and there's two Saints corners on him, right? That's what everyone thinks. It's not that blatantly obvious when teams double up a guy. Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings, even mentioned it in a video that the Vikings posted. It was like only like 8 or 9 plays that the Lions didn't have another guy either over the top or bracket Jefferson. And I think it's just hilarious because Twitter was all like, why is no one praising Jeff Okudah? Because he had a single high safety over him the entire time.
I mean,
anyway,
we can get into Jeff Okudah a little bit later. I have some thoughts, but continue.
I digress. What that means, though, is that if defenses are going to pay that much attention to Justin Jefferson, that just opens up the other half of the field then for a KJ Osborne and an Adam Thielen. And Adam Thielen returned. I mean, he came in clutch last week. He had 6 catches, 8 targets, 61 yards, and a touchdown. Good for 18 points. I don't know where he finished, but it was top 20. If defenses continue to kind of do this with Jefferson, where they will eliminate an entire half of the field, that opens up things for Thielen and Osborne. And this is how Thielen is going to get his production is, I mean, I'm not going to say off the back of poor performances from Jefferson, but you know what you get with Thielen is that he's a major red zone threat, year in, year out, and there's going to be ample opportunity for him to really kind of showcase, hey, I'm 32 years old still, and I'm still going to produce for you. So I like Thielen as a buy low, and especially now where you're looking for flex options, right? Because, I mean, usually at this point, your top guy, a running back and wide receiver, or your top two guys are pretty much like bona fide starters, right? And now you're just trying to find that final piece that gets it right, that, you know, completes the team. I say that's Adam Thielen.
I like Adam Thielen going forward. I think the Vikings are learning they're going to have to spread the football around in order to beat teams, and they can't just force feed Justin Jefferson like they did week one. The Packers were just actually silly enough to play zone coverage the entire game and just allow Jefferson to torch them over the middle. My buy low candidate, this one was easy for me, Javonte Williams. Go out and get Javonte Williams. Here's the thing. You can be concerned about Melvin Gordon stealing goal line work, receiving work, whole 9 yards. Like, that's just going to be a reality of this year. But Javonte is going to stumble into the end zone. Like, let's not forget, this guy had 19 fantasy points week one. He found the end zone. He's being involved in the passing attack. Those are all things that we knew were coming for Javonte Williams this year. Played 33 snaps on Sunday Night Football against San Francisco. He got 20 opportunities on those 33 snaps. So the Broncos want to feed him the football, right? They're not just having him stand out on the field as a decoy or anything. When he's on the field, he's touching the football. And you can find managers who are going to panic on back-to-back 9-point games from him. So I'm going out getting Javonte. Like, I'm hands down a couple of leagues, AJ Dillon and Brandon Cooks, Javonte Williams. I'm seeing if people will bite on that. Devonta Smith, he's a great one. I think you can package with like an AJ Dillon and go out and get Javonte Williams, right? Not to use your flag plan, Tyler, but he's just a guy that I have in a few leagues, and I'm like, I'm looking to package and trade up here if I possibly can. So Javonte Williams is absolutely my buy low of the week. Let's breeze through sell highs quick because we got a lot of notes, a lot of games to cover today. We're going to cover the whole slate. Tyler, your sell high, a running back here. We both chose running backs for our sell highs.
Yeah, this is Cordarrelle Patterson, and it stinks to say because it's literally him and Drake London so far that have really been producing for, you know, fantasy managers and stuff on the Falcons. Kyle Pitts kind of showed out a little bit, but I think that was more matchup than it was anything else. That's bold, but I'm willing to stick by it.
It was a good matchup, and he finally paid off on it.
Yep. Here are Patterson's next 4 matchups: Cleveland, Tampa, San Francisco, Cincinnati. Yikes. After
Cleveland
that,
isn't the worst. So, like,
Yeah.
I get if you want to hold on to him through this week, but I don't think he's going to put up 22 this week.
No, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm expecting another kind of Rams week this week for Patterson, so that's why he makes it. But after those 4 games, he gets kind of like a decent stretch where he gets Carolina, the Chargers, Carolina again, Chicago, Washington. And that's probably what is going to make the trade. You know, if you sell him high, it's going to look bad. But just wait. He has Pittsburgh week 13. That's when TJ Watt will be plenty back by then. That defense will be the Pittsburgh Steelers defense that you know and love. They then have a bye in week 14. Then they go against New Orleans, Baltimore, Arizona, and Tampa last 4 games of the season. Schedule does not favor Patterson except for maybe 2-3 weeks. And sooner rather than later, if the Falcons love Tyler Algier as much as preseason was saying that they did, Algier is going to become more and more a part of the offense. Cash in on the value on Patterson right now.
And you get Damian Williams back in week 6, and they wanted him to be involved. So I'm not waiting on Cordarrelle. I'm going to sell him this week because someone's going to think the Cleveland Browns matchup is still like really good opportunity for him. But then when he hits Tampa Bay, that's when he's going to hit the brick wall. So I'm with you. Cash in on Cordarrelle Patterson while you still can. I chose a running back as well, as I mentioned. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Do I need to say anything other than he had 7 rushing attempts for 0 yards last week? He got bailed out by a 50-yard rush in week 2. He would have been sub-10 fantasy points if it wasn't for his last rush, which gave him the bump to 14, right? Sell Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He gets Tampa Bay this week. Oh, I'm going to lay into Clyde Edwards-Helaire later, but sell high. Sell high on Clyde. There's no question about that. All right, let's cruise through some news and notes here before we break down every single game coming up this week for fantasy football. Let's start with this. Dak Prescott has an outside chance to play Week 5 versus the Rams. You think he gets back Week 5? Yes or no?
No.
I wouldn't advise the Cowboys to do that. I think Dak sits out a little while. I think he should sit out a little while longer, especially against the Rams. Like, that's not the matchup I want to come back to. I want to come back to a matchup I can ease myself into. I know that's not like very baller of Dak Prescott, but also like that's not the game I want to come back to. Keenan Allen returns to practice this week. It's good news there for the Chargers. Got a favorable matchup this week for slot wide receivers and Keenan Allen. Tests on Amon-Ra's ankle are quote-unquote encouraging, which is good. Having Amon-Ra on the field means Amon-Ra is in your lineup. No two ways about it. Here's an interesting one. A Green Bay beat reporter.
The anonymous one.
Dobbs might be in for wide receiver 1 role. To which I say, no dur.
Yep.
Who else is it going to be? Christian Watson can't stay on the field. Alan Lazard can't stay on the field. Romeo Dobbs, when you catch eight receptions on 8 targets from Aaron Rodgers, that's how you gain his trust. So, yeah, no duh. Dobbs is probably going to be the wide receiver 1 now. If you went out, did you pick up Romeo Dobbs in any leagues this week?
No.
Okay. I did in a few, and I had to spend fab on him in a few. I spent like 20% of my fab to go get Dobbs on my team.
Interesting.
And I feel good about that because I think he is the wide receiver 1 for this team going forward. I will be happy when Aaron Rodgers starts to force feed him the football. Not to the level of Devontae Adams. Don't hear what I'm not saying, but like, I think he is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 going forward. Tua Tagovailoa listed limited at practice this week. No surprise there. Wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't play on Thursday Night Football. Titans offensive coordinator wants to get Treylon Burks more involved. Does that mean anything to you? We can discuss this a little bit later, but I found this interesting that now they're like, oh, we need to get Treylon Burks involved. You had Robert Woods coming off of an ACL. Why are you not getting him involved sooner?
Yeah, I mean, and they like Kyle Phillips more than Treylon Burks in week 1 before Phillips got hurt.
Right.
I don't understand it. I do like it though, but it's confusing.
It is. So I'm hoping to get Treylon Burks more involved this week. It's not my favorite matchup for him to be quote unquote more involved, but I'm encouraged as a Treylon Burks manager in a few leagues. And then lastly, Zach Wilson is back and will start against the Steelers this week. We'll talk about what that means for Jets weapons coming up here. But let's move on to our breakdown here. We're going to fly through this breakdown in 40 minutes. I'm confident.
I say less.
Oh.
I'm taking the under.
He's taking the under. Take the under over on PrizePicks using the promo code Fellas. I mean,
yes.
There was a line for that.
Yes.
Make sure to go check out our friends over at PrizePicks and Underdog. Promo code Fellas on both sites there. Get an instant match up to your... Or get 100... Oh, my goodness. Get an instant match on your first deposit up to $100. Goodness, I butchered that line. Thursday Night Football this week, Tyler. Football tonight, when the people are listening to this podcast, will be the 3-0 Dolphins traveling to the Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are favored by 3.5 in this game. Line is at 46.5. Let's start with the visiting Dolphins. Jalen Waddle, you're starting him this week, right?
Yes.
Tyreek Hill, you're absolutely starting this week, but there's another question that goes with this now. Because on social media, it's all been Tyreek Hill trash talking Eli Apple. And Tua coming out and saying, if he's one-on-one with Eli, Tyreek is getting the football. So how big of a game is Tyreek Hill actually going to have this week, do you think?
I want to say he's going to drop a 50-piece on Eli Apple just because that's what everyone wants to see.
Right,
but,
right.
No, I think I'm expecting another. I mean, let me look up his stats real quick because here's the thing. week 2 is really inflating everything on the Dolphins right now. I mean, week 1 against the Patriots, he went 8 for 94 on 12 targets. Then last week, though, he had 2 catches on 4 targets. It really feels like it could be either Waddle or Tyreek Hill. And I don't know if Tyreek Hill can, I don't know if he can draw up Eli Apple every time, right? Like, because I'm picturing, like, Tyreek is thinking, like, okay, he's out of the huddle, and he's kind of, like, looking across the defense, like, where is that man? And then whichever side Eli Apple goes to, he will go to. That's just not how it works.
No.
I mean, I'm expecting more than 15 from him this week. But at the same time, with Tua kind of being in his little predicament right now, I don't know if I can really expect like a full-on performance from the Dolphins because his back is hurting. So if he gets hit in the wrong way, like who knows what can happen next? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
I just don't have as much faith in Dolphins players this week than I guess in weeks past.
Yeah, I want Tyreek Hill to throw up 50. That's all I care about.
Please.
I mean, realistically, we'll probably get like a 15-point game out of Tyreek this week, which I think will be fine. You have any confidence in Chase Edmonds this week?
No, not really.
Yeah, I'm hesitant to start him in all the leagues that I manage him in. I'm probably looking at other options, not named Chase Edmonds this week, if I have the option to. Look, with the Bengals, you're starting all of them: Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, all of them.
Got to.
Joe Mixon, start all of them. Okay, but how do you feel about Tyler Boyd? Massive week last week. Here's the thing, though: Miami's allowing the 8th most fantasy points to slot wide receivers this year, so that's what makes Tyler Boyd intriguing for me. I don't think that's like indicative of like absolutely must start Tyler Boyd this week, but I see that number and I say interesting because I noticed that about Tyler, the Jets last week. They had allowed quite a few fantasy points to the slot this year. So I was thinking about Tyler Boyd last week even.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing some in-depth research using, shameless plug here, the 33rd teams tool called the Edge. Absolutely, go check it out. It is such a I'm not going to call it a cheat code, but it is a cheat code. I mean,
100% free for you to use, so it's a cheat code.
Yeah, it's a cheat code. I like. It's interesting how often they're using Boyd in the slot compared to like Jamar Chase.
Right.
Man, I don't know. I don't know if you can necessarily throw him into a starting lineup this week.
If you're desperate.
I think if you're desperate, or if like it was later on in the season and you've got people on bye weeks and stuff, like that makes sense. But
I'm not excited to throw him into my lineup this week. Like I'm not going out and I'm like, oh, Rashad Bateman down week last week. You know what? I'm going to start Tyler Boyd over him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
go that far.
I think it's the best way to put it is if you're desperate or if you're like, you know what, I'm 3-0, like, and I'm playing the guy that's 0-3. Yeah, sure, I'll throw Tyler Boyd in the flex. I'll still win.
Right. If you're questioning like a Ramondre Stevenson or Tyler Boyd in the flex, I think I would lean Tyler Boyd.
I would lean Tyler Boyd.
Right. Bingo. Even though Ramondre is also coming off of a massive game. All right, let's move on. We got a big Sunday slate to cruise through here. And let's start with our Minnesota Vikings over in London.
London town.
3-point favorites over New Orleans in this game. Lines at 43.5 total points. Kirk Cousins. I think he's a fine streamer this week. He's not my favorite streaming option this week. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, for sure.
If you have him, obviously if he's your quarterback one, you're starting him because I'm guessing you don't have many other options. But Kirk isn't like my number one streamer this week. But if you have to start him, like I do in our Dynasty League, because I casually have both Dak Prescott and Trey Lance on my team. Talk about my team just getting the double birds, like second year in a row. I'm starting Kirk Cousins this week versus like a Jimmy Garoppolo. Dalvin Cook, you're starting him. No questions. You drafted to start him. You don't think twice about it. Justin Jefferson, you're starting him, but you have to recognize the matchup. It's Marshawn Lattimore. So you think he had a down week against Jeff Okudah in safety over top last week. Congrats. You get Marshawn Lattimore this week, who is no slouch. Could expose that a little bit. But, like, I'm not expecting a big boom game from Jefferson. I'm thinking he, like, falls underneath his projection by, like, a point or two would be my guess.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to remember how long ago. Was that the Alvin Kamara Christmas game where Jefferson was on the team at that point?
Yeah.
And, I mean, it wasn't a good game for the Vikings at all. But,
no.
I mean, Lattimore pretty much had Jefferson, in a bag the entire game. So I would just limit the expectations, but at the same time, it could have been a lesson week last week for the Vikings where they realized, like, okay, we got to get Jefferson kind of moving across the line of scrimmage a little bit more, get him some early touches, like. Yep. I think again, like, you're not going to bench Justin Jefferson. Like, you can't.
No, you can't. It's just, I think you have to tamper expectations. Your sell high or your buy low, excuse me. Not your sell high, your buy low, Adam Thielen. You starting him this week?
Yes, I am.
You are.
As a flex, again, like, it depends.
I'm not excited to put him in my lineup, but he's probably better than my other options at this point.
Bingo.
Bounce back day for Kamara, yes or no?
I guess it kind of depends on how healthy he is. He didn't look great against Carolina.
Do you have to be healthy to torch the Minnesota Vikings, though? 5th most fantasy points allowed to running backs this year?
You shouldn't be, but it was Carolina last week. So, I don't know. Maybe fair. There's some hope for the Vikings. I think if Michael Thomas and Jarvis Landry are out, because I think they're both battling some kind of injury. I don't know the status of them. Let me get that out of the way first. But
yeah,
I think if they both miss the game, then Kamara absolutely does have a game just because they need him more involved then.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely agree. Michael Thomas, again, status somewhat in question. It sounds like he's doing okay. He was seen running around after or trying to run it off like after the game. So I'm guessing he'll be okay for this week, but we don't have an official report on that. You're starting him if he plays, right? Minnesota's along the ninth most fantasy points to slot wide receivers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Chris Olave, is he a must start this week? Allowing Minnesota's along the 13th most fantasy points to wide receivers in general this year.
Man, as much as I love Cameron Dantzler, Olave could absolutely torch him this week. Yeah. Let's be honest.
If they're not, I mean, and even Pat Pete at 41 years old, yeah, torched by Olave, right? So I think Olave is a must start this week. You got to. I would much rather start Olave or Adam Thielen in this game. Who'd rather start?
Olave.
I agree. All right, let's move on to our normal slate now, starting at 12 p.m. and not way early in the morning over in London. Tennessee at Indianapolis. Indianapolis favored by 3.5 points here. Over under is at 42.5. I'm pulling these numbers off of FanDuel Sportsbook, by the way. Figure I should mention that. Derrick Henry, you're stuck into starting him. No two ways about it. Any interest in Robert Woods this week? No from me.
No, I mean, it was good to see the targets last week, but I need to see a little bit more.
Treylon Burks, any interest in him? Again, Todd Downing said he wants to get him more involved, as we mentioned in the news. I'm kind of tempted, but I'm also not. Like, this isn't the matchup I want to feel great about starting Treylon Burks in.
No, I need to see a week where he actually does get, like, volume and stuff before I stick him in a lineup.
I 100% agree. We're going to keep this game short. Jonathan Taylor, you're starting him. Michael Pittman, you're starting him. Tennessee's allowing the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. My goodness, my cat is tearing up the house. Michael Pittman, if you heard that loud boom behind me, that was my cat knocking something over, and I don't know what. Michael Pittman, Tennessee's allowing the 5th most fantasy points to wide receivers. You know what? If Michael Pittman weren't such like an obvious name, I would make him my start of the week, but I can't because everybody and their mother is starting Michael Pittman already and loves him this year.
True.
Let's move on again. We'll keep that game short and quick. We have Chicago at the New York Giants, who are favored by 3.5 in this game. This is going to be a disgusting game. Line's at 39.5 points according to FanDuel Sportsbook. Tyler. Khalil Herbert might literally be the only Bears player worth starting literally ever in the existence of Bears players when David Montgomery is out. Like, this is bad, man. I'm assuming Monty's going to be out this week. They keep calling him day to day, but I don't want to rush him back. I wouldn't rush him back if I were the Bears. Giants are allowing the third most rush yards and second most yards per carry. I'm assuming you're just all systems go on Khalil Herbert this week if David Montgomery's out.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got him, you got to play him.
You have to. I'm not going to say he's my start of the week because I haven't made my start of the week decisions yet. That's for Saturday. But, like, he might be up there for my start of the week.
Well, he's Alexander Mattison light.
Right. And he honestly he might have a little more juice than Madison. I like Madison better as the player, but like I'm sorry, Khalil Herbert, he's got some juice, man.
He's a dog. He's
got that dog in him. Darnell Mooney, I'm assuming no.
No, you can't. No. I'm getting to the point of like you can drop Darnell Mooney.
If he doesn't perform this week against the Giants, I'm cutting him. I was listening to the Fantasy Footballers podcast. They already said you should cut Darnell Mooney. I'm giving it one more week. And then I'm going to cut Darnell Mooney if he doesn't perform. This passing offense is just horrendous.
Chicago, the place where wide receivers go to die.
No joke. Saquon Barkley, you're starting him. Chicago has allowed the 7th most rushing yards. He's a running back 1 in fantasy football right now. Do you know that? My boy, Saquon Barkley. Shout out Saquon for not making me look like an idiot drafting you in the first round of my Dynasty League last year. Are you interested in any Giants wide receivers at this point? Sterling Shepard, torn ACL, done for the season. Kadarius Toney, is that man ever going to be healthy? Kenny G, he's counting all the G's he's got in money. He ain't playing on the football field. And Wan'Dale Robinson still isn't practicing. So you got Richie James. You got literal called him in off the sidewalk to come take a few snaps, right? Like, so really, I say any Giants wide receiver. Are you interested in Richie James?
Maybe just a little bit. I guess maybe. Oh, sorry. I think let me clarify this. I think for fantasy purposes, for the rest of the year, Richie James, and that's it.
Yeah.
But just for personal sake and just I'll call it the ins and outs of the NFL because Kadarius Toney was a first round pick. That's something to watch because I wish teams just told us why these kind of players just don't see the field. Like,
he was hurt last week. He didn't play due to injury last week.
But he was healthy and ready to go the first 2 weeks.
Right.
They just chose not to use it. I'm sorry. I don't care if it's a matchup. Kadarius Toney is a guy that can. I'm not going to say he can do it all, but he is such a freak athlete.
Though. He is dynamite.
Right. Why wouldn't you play that? Unless there's something seriously going on behind the scenes, and that's what my guess would be. But again, what the heck is going on?
I got burned on a lot of Kadarius Toney. He'd be my wide receiver 5 in a multitude of leagues. I just dropped him for Romeo Doubs, though, who was on waivers in a league that we were in, which I was shocked by. Competitive TikTok creator league. Ooh, that's not a good look. I'm surprised he wasn't picked up earlier. I'm with you. Richie James, I have a slight interest in. Daniel Bellinger, I'm I don't know. I might stream him. I'm not super interested though. But this team has no pass catchers, and it's going to be all Saquon Barkley. He's going to be the primary pass catcher for this team as long as literally all these wide receivers don't put up numbers. Fair to say?
Yep, absolutely.
Moving on, we have Buffalo at Baltimore. Buffalo's favored by 3 points in this game. Line's at 51.5 points. Josh Allen, you're starting. Stephon Diggs, you're starting. Gabe Davis.
Yes.
Fire him up. All systems go. Yes, absolutely. Baltimore's allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Gabe Davis has to be in your lineup this week. Devin Singletary, though. 11 targets last week, 9 receptions, 78 yards, and a touchdown. Baltimore's allowing the 7th most fantasy points and 3rd most receptions to running backs this year. How do you feel about Devin Singletary this week after his running back 4 finish, 24.5 fantasy points?
I think the only reason why I'm not starting him, even though the matchup looks good, is because I don't think he makes a difference in winning your week or not compared to some of the other players that you may have on your team. Sure, I'm expecting, 13, 14 points, but I think there's someone else out there that can put up a 17 or 18 piece that's why, like, yes, I'm watching for Singletary, because if he can do it again, then going forward, like, yeah,
Yes.
he should be in the lineup. But I need to see another week, and I think that there's someone else out there that's worth starting over him.
I need one more game before I'm willing to play running back roulette with the Buffalo Bills. I do this every year where one of them goes off and I'm like, oh my gosh, finally. And then it's like, wait, next week they're non-existent. So if Devin Singletary does it 2 weeks in a row, I'll gladly play running back roulette with the Buffalo Bills and then hate myself later for doing it, right? Like, but that's just how fantasy works, is you play these games as long as, you can't play these games too early, but until a player proves to you that they're worth their value or worth their performance, then I'll play that game with them. And Devin Singletary is a perfect example of that. Lamar Jackson, quarterback one in fantasy. You're starting.
You're setting him this week.
Oh yeah,
Kidding.
know what? I agree.
The number one overall player in fantasy football right now. Yeah, you're setting him.
Yeah, no questions asked about it. It's a bad matchup against the Bills. Nah. I don't know, man. You considering streaming options?
Give me Derek Carr this week.
I turned way too serious for a second. You're starting Lamar Jackson. No two ways about it. Mark Andrews, you're firing him up. The best stack in fantasy football this year, you can't tell me otherwise, is Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Rashad Bateman, still a little bit of a nicked up Buffalo secondary. They didn't get absolutely torched last week. Tyreek Hill was held to only 5 fantasy points. Jalen Waddle, I believe, had 15. So didn't go bonkers. Part of that was like Tua coming in and out of the game, right? Like, how do you feel about Rashad Bateman?
I'm feeling pretty confident in Bateman this week. Again, beat up secondary, no more Micah Hyde. Jordan Poyer should be back, but the cornerback room, Tre'Davious White still isn't back. Like, and if this is going to be a shootout, if it is, and I think it will be, because what's the over-under at? 51? Shootout. Bateman's going to get some work. His work so far this year hasn't been the prettiest sight, but I think, I'm not going to be surprised if he goes like 5 for 90 and can maybe find the end zone, right? Like 5 for 90 is what I'm expecting for Bateman.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not excited to start Bateman, but the matchup doesn't deter me from starting him by any means.
Here's probably the best way to say, how confident I am in Bateman. If it's between Devin Singletary and Rashad Bateman, I'm going Rashad Bateman over Devin Singletary.
Yes, I would agree. I would go Rashad Bateman over Devin Singletary. Sorry, I need to make this side comment quick. In one of the competitive TikTok leagues that we're in, we're currently having a kicker off of who's got the best kicker and who picked up the best kicker where. And all I said was I took a photo of my man Waku, who's the number one kicker in fantasy football right now that we are rostering. I just sent it in the chat. I go, y'all. Sends the photo. Shut up.
Yep. Enough said.
We love Waku. Got to keep waiting on J.K. Dobbins. I assume you're not looking to start any Baltimore running back.
When John Harbaugh comes out and says that Justice Hill looked like a star.
Yeah, that terrifies me. That terrifies me for Baltimore running backs. I'm not touching them with the 10-foot pole. Let's move on. Chargers at Texans. Chargers 5.5-point favorites in this game. Is this like a sneaky upset game this week?
Yeah, like if I'm a betting person, I'm taking Houston 5.5.
Yeah, I agree. I saw that line and I'm like, that's kind of outrageous. Like I know the Chargers are getting Keenan Allen back this week, and Houston's allowed up a ton of fantasy points to slot wide receivers, but like 5.5, like Houston, like they're playing tough this year. They're playing tough. 44.5 is the line, according to FanDuel Sportsbook. Justin Herbert, you got to start him. Keenan Allen, again, talking about how Houston has allowed up, I believe, 70-plus fantasy points to slot wide receivers this year. You're firing Keenan Allen up. Mike Williams, though, is he still a lineup block for you? He is for me. Yeah,
you have to. You have to keep him in your lineup.
I don't know if people were as in on him as we were, though, because we were taking him mid-4th round, right? And he was being drafted like early mid-5th round. And we were taking him as early as mid-4th round. So he would be our wide receiver 2 in most cases. For some people, he's our wide receiver 3. They may have other options outside of Mike Williams. But you're staying strong on Mike Will. I am. I think he's still a lineup block. I think you have to play him on the chance he gives you 20-plus fantasy points.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were gonna add more on that. Sorry. I'm like,
No, I mean you nailed it. Like
just with how big of fans we are, I'm like, oh, I'm surprised you're not gonna like harp on that even more.
again, when you have a player that has an opportunity to go off for 20 plus and even like 25 plus, it's just like Tyler Lockett a couple years ago, right? Like
you still fire him up because
you still fire
when
him
he
up.
gives you 40, you're so happy you started him.
Mm-hmm.
Austin Eckler. Here's the note I have on him. Start? Question mark? Like, you have to. But man, that rushing volume and production is horrendous to start the year. Absolutely pitiful. His receiving work has kept him alive, and he's still a running back 13, I believe, in PPR formats. So like you're starting him because of his receiving work, but like, man, it's tough to be an Eckler manager right now.
Yep. And with the state of their offensive line right now too, that's an even more. It's even more of a detriment to any kind of touchdown upside Eckler had, which was pretty slim to begin with.
Well, and here we go. 14 rushing attempts in week 1, 36 rushing yards, 2.5 yards a carry. 14 attempts in week 2, 39 rushing yards, 2.8 yards per carry. 4 attempts for 5 yards last week. Yard and a quarter per carry. Like, it has not been good. Then you look at these receiving numbers, 4 of 4 in week 1, 9 for 10, not 9 for 10, 9 of 10 in week 2, 9 receptions on 10 targets, 8 for 8 in week 3, right? Like, this is what's going to give you value on Austin Eckler still. It's the reason why he's still the running back 13 in PPR formats. So you have to start him, but the rushing work is going to be woeful. Like, you just have to accept that right now. Brandon Cooks, are you starting him this week? Chargers have allowed the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. You have a bounce back week, 9.4 points in week 2, 4.2 last week. Like, as a guy who loves Brandon Cooks and has a fair share of Brandon Cooks this year, I'm not excited about Brandon Cooks right now.
He draws J.C. Jackson this week.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think so, but man, the way that the Chargers have been playing, though, I feel like you got to give them one more go.
I think you do. I think you do. This team needs to bounce back this week, but I don't know if the Texans are going to let them.
Sorry. A notification popped up on my phone, and it was somebody asking, drop Cam Akers for KJ Osborne or George Pickens?
No, don't drop Cam Akers yet. He's a sick candidate this week, but don't drop him.
Gosh, like, I know Cam Akers is not, like, oh, gosh. We'll just keep going. Like, gosh.
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. Are you ready to trust Dameon Pierce in your lineup? Here we go. There's a fun question for you. You're starting Dameon Pierce as a flex play this week?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm so upset I didn't trade up with you in our rookie draft this year to firmly snag Dameon Pierce. I knew I had a good feeling in my bones about him. He's here. I think he's a solid flex play going forward. Let's move on. Seattle at Detroit. Shout out to Detroit. 4.5-point favorites in this game. Line's at 48.5. Expect this to be a decently scoring game. That seems high. DK Metcalf. Are you starting him? 17 fantasy points last week. Detroit's allowing the 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. But man, like I know you were talking about Jeff Okudah. One safety high. Double teaming Justin Jefferson. Goose-egged Devonta Smith week 1, though, when matched up against him. Held Terry McLaurin in check week 2. Justin Jefferson, I know we had safety high, but like Okudah, like, is he like sneaky? Really, I think he's sneaky coming into his own this year. I think otherwise.
No, I think he is, but all the people saying that like he's that guy, he ain't. Like,
I'm not ready to put him in the top 5 cornerback conversation. Are you kidding me? Like, I've seen some of those.
There are people that are willing to say that, and those people you don't listen to.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. But DK Metcalf, are you starting him this week?
He's a walking mismatch, and especially if he draws Jeff Okudah, that is a mismatch waiting to happen. You just gotta hope that Seattle can actually just like
get him the
time.
Football. Yeah.
And I feel like going into week 4, like it has to happen. Like, come on.
It has to. It really does. They got to make it happen. Yeah, you got to start DK Metcalf if he's on your team. You drafted him to be a starter. Tyler Lockett. I think he's a sneaky start for me this week.
He's a sneaky flex.
He is. I 100% agree. Detroit's allowing the 11th most fantasy points to slot wide receivers this year. I sneaky like Tyler Lockett as a flex play this week. Tyler Lockett or Adam Thielen?
I kind of like Tyler Lockett more.
Tyler Lockett or Devin Singletary? I'm just throwing out names that we've already talked about.
Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett, Rashad Bateman.
Probably Tyler Lockett.
I sneaky like Tyler Lockett this week, man.
He's my start of the week. Ha! Called it.
I was hoping I could subtly talk about Tyler Lockett throughout this whole segment, and then come the agenda on Friday, I just drop a Remember how I was typing up Tyler Lockett? Oh, you called. Oh, that's the worst. That is literally the worst. We're gonna move on, so I don't continue to be this upset. Rashad Penny, are you spot starting him against Detroit this week?
No.
Really? Not even with the matchup.
No, not even with the matchup. This backfield is atrocious, and I don't know what they're trying to do with Kenneth Walker and Rashad Penny.
That's so confusing. I don't understand what they're doing.
Detroit,
they've allowed the most fantasy points to running backs this year, though. The most rushing touchdowns, 6 on the season. That's 2 a game. You don't think Rashad Penny falls into the end zone this week? Just once. Like, I know Seattle is like miserable and can't get inside of the red zone, but like, I'm willing to spot start Rashad Penny this week. He'll probably find his way into half a dozen of my lineups.
So I think the best way to look at this is they played Philly, Washington, Minnesota so far. I group Philly and Minnesota together, and I group Washington and Seattle closer together. We saw what happened with Antonio Gibson. That goal line score saved his week. Do I expect a goal? Sure, he can maybe find the end zone once, but like it's nothing. It's not going to be great. It's not going to be sexy. It's going to be like 12 or 13.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you Rashad Penny's going to put up 20 this week, but like I think there's a chance he puts up 15. I think there's a chance. He adds anything onto his rushing totals from weeks 1 and 3. He becomes a top 25 play those weeks. Jamal Williams. Here's what I have in the doc.
Fire him up.
Start. In all caps. Fire him up. Seattle's allowing the 4th most fantasy points, 2nd most rush yards to running backs this year. You got to fire him up this week. If you have him on your team, Amon-Ra, if he plays, you're starting him. Any interest in DJ Chark or Josh Reynolds with DeAndre Swift out?
I like Josh Reynolds more than DJ Chark.
Ooh, interesting. I don't think that's all that spicy, but
I think
he's interesting.
There's value to both of these guys now, but I would lean Reynolds over Chark.
I think I would lean Chark over Reynolds, but that's minuscule at this point because you're probably not playing either of them. Let's move on. We have quite a few games we need to cruise through here as we're coming up. I believe we're about 40 minutes into the episode here. Jets at Steelers. Steelers 3-point favorites in this game. Lines at 41.5 on FanDuel. Zach Wilson's back. Do you consider him a streaming option this week? Pittsburgh's allowed the 9th most fantasy points and the 7th most passing attempts this year.
Nope, I need to see a good game out of Zach Wilson before.
I would agree. The matchup was there. I figured I'd ask. Here we go. Give me the 3 names in this in whatever order. How are you ranking Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Corey Davis this week? Pittsburgh's allowing the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers and the 6th most to slot wide receivers.
Tyler Conklin, and Tyler Conklin.
Tyler Conklin, wide receiver 1 for the Jets, baby.
Yes, sir. No, I probably... man, because this really... I mean, it depends on if Garrett Wilson is all, is 100%.
I mean, he came back into last week's game, and he ended up putting up... Still saw 10 targets last week.
He went over on his prop line, and remember that on PrizePicks.
That's all I need. Right, that's all I needed. I didn't care about anything after that. He just needed to make me some money last week.
I'm probably going to go in that order. Wilson, Moore, Davis. But honestly, sorry, the the receiver that actually benefited the most from having Zach Wilson under center last year was actually Corey Davis.
It was, you're right. So it might be Garrett Wilson on top. Here's the thing, though. I'm going to take Elijah Moore this week. I think this is the game Elijah Moore bounces back. So I got Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis. But like Elijah Moore and Garrett Wilson are going to be like probably like 29 and 30 in my rankings this week. Right? I think they're going to be like right next to each other. Elijah Moore. I'm going to read some numbers that are going to blow your mind here. Fairly disappointing this year for Elijah Moore, right? Hasn't been that great. He's first in routes run. He's run the most routes in the NFL this year. He's got a 91.5% snap share. He's got 304 air yards, which is 14th. He has 180 unrealized air yards, which is 7th in the league. Like the guy's walking top 10 in walking top 20 in all these metrics, borderline top 15. So I'm willing to take the shot on Elijah Moore this week with Zach Wilson coming back and the Steelers typically allowing more fantasy points to slot wide receivers. I'm going to take the shot on Elijah Moore this week. I think I'm willing to throw him into my lineup at the flex spot if I really need him. Breece Hall. What are we doing with Breece Hall, man? Zach Wilson's back. Not the check down magician that Joe Flacco is. Here's the thing, though. Outsnapped Michael Carter in week 3. Out-targeted Michael Carter in week 3. 11 targets to Michael Carter's 2 targets. And Pittsburgh's allowing the 10th most receptions and fantasy points and the 4th most rush yards to running backs this year. Can you start Breece Hall this week? Do you have enough confidence to do it?
Sorry for the silence. This question just sucks. I'm not confident in either because it could be Michael Carter this week, right? And also it's points to Breece Hall. It could be Michael Carter. I just think I don't trust either of them, and it's not of any fault of their own. It's just the coaches over in New England are just, I'm not going to call them buffoons, but like they kind of outsmart themselves a little bit, where they're like, oh, we'll be so sneaky and we'll give Breece Hall 11 targets. You still got blown out by the Bengals. Okay.
Right. I think I'm willing to give Breece Hall a shot in my lineup this week. I think you have to. After the amount of targets he's seen across the first 3 weeks, I think you have to. I think you have to give him a shot this week.
Yeah.
Tyler Conklin. Was Zach Wilson back, or are you starting him this week?
Yeah.
Yep, I am as well. Tyler Conklin, if you don't have one of the big 5, Tyler Conklin should be in your lineup. Let's move on. Jacksonville at Philadelphia. We really got to fly here. Philly is 6.5-point favorite in this game. Line's at 46.5. Trevor Lawrence, big week last week, but I'm avoiding him this week. Yes, not a streaming option.
Yeah, going to Philly is tough.
Yep. James Robinson, you're starting him. No questions. Travis Etienne, you got to sit him at this point.
You got to cut him at this point.
Oh.
I'm kidding. No, you said.
I was gonna say. I'm like, oh.
I feel
not
like
expecting that.
I feel like I need to swing the pendulum back so far to the other side because there are so many people that are just like, just wait, be patient. Huh?
The amount of people in our comments who say these guys were in on Travis Etienne. You shouldn't listen to them. They said they were to be in on Etienne. And they it's with it's like to just totally backstab us of like, man, this didn't age well. Yeah, they said to be in on Etienne too. Get out of our comments. We said no such positive thing about Travis Etienne on this podcast. Or in general. All of our content creation, we had no posts on Travis Etienne because we did not want to discuss that man. We did not want to start a war with anybody. We have been out on him. We did not advise anybody to draft him. We stayed neutral, and it has paid off because I wouldn't even say we stayed neutral. We're like halfway between neutral and like the opposite end of the spectrum of negative.
I carried the anti-narrative.
Yes, you carried the anti. Yes, yeah. You threw out a few threads on Twitter that included Etienne. At this point you got to set Etienne. Christian Kirk.
So sorry.
Yikes. Christian Kirk. You expect him to fall back to earth this week? Darius Slay in coverage would be my guess. I'm still starting him.
I'm still starting him. Yeah, maybe a little bit of a drop off, but
my guess is like 12 points this week. 12 points for Christian Kirk. You taking a shot on Zay Jones? 9+ targets in 2 of the first 3 weeks.
No, just because
He doesn't excite me, but I might. If I'm desperate, if I have last-minute injuries pop up, like Zay Jones might be one of the guys I look at.
Well, here's the thing. If it's not Darius Slay he's going up against, it's James Bradbury.
James Bradbury. That is also true. That's
why I'm out.
Yeah, I'm not. So let me say that. I'm not excited to put Zay Jones in any lineup this week, but I'm at least giving him a look. I'm at least looking his way. Just like that. Jalen Hurts. You're starting him. A.J. Brown. Yep. You're starting him. Devonta Smith.
Starting.
Okay, you're very confident in that. Jacksonville's allowing the 11th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year.
I mean, Philadelphia has figured out the game script of getting both guys involved and the rushing game going. I'm not going to say they're on. Yeah, absolutely. He's still a sell high. But I think, this is the week that confirms again, yes, go sell high on him.
Miles Sanders, what are you doing with him this week? Jacksonville's allowed the fewest rushing yards to running backs this year. Only 114 rushing yards across 3 games. That is literally 40 a game.
I think
45 a game. So excuse me.
I mean, I hope that when you draft, if you're listening to this and you drafted Miles Sanders, you drafted him to be a running back 3. This is exactly why.
Yeah, because you can't play. I don't think you can play Miles Sanders this week. I'm going to bench him in the one league I have him in.
Yep.
The one league. Dallas Goedert. I think you got to start him if you have him.
Yep.
Fair to say?
Yep.
Cleveland and Atlanta. Cleveland's only a 1.5 here. I would
give me
take
Cleveland money line.
Really? You think they stomp Atlanta this week? I think Atlanta could win this game. 49.5 is the over/under. That seems really high. Nick Chubb, you're starting. Kareem Hunt, are you starting back-to-back 9-point weeks? I think against Atlanta, you have to, though.
You have to.
Amari Cooper, starting this week, I assume.
Yeah,
Atlanta's allowed the 4th most fantasy points to wide receivers. I think you give it one more week and you sell high on Amari Cooper after this week. He almost made the sell high list today.
Yeah, I agree.
Marcus Mariota, you taking him as a streaming option this week? Cleveland's allowing the 11th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year.
Yes, because if they don't have Myles Garrett, which it doesn't sound like they will, Jadeveon Clowney is also still hurt, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. I'm not positive on that.
Cleveland doesn't really have a pass rush then, so it's not one of those like, oh, he's going to torch him from like 300 yards. No, he's going to add like 80 yards rushing, and he could find a rushing touchdown.
Cordarrelle Patterson, you got to start him at this point. Sit. Okay, you're sitting him this week.
I'm sitting him.
Okay.
I think Cordarrelle is very, very matchup dependent. That's why it was so great last week against Seattle. That's why it wasn't so great against the Rams. I'm sitting him.
I think I'm willing to plug him in at a flex. But again, if you have other options, other stronger, more matchup favorable options, I might lean their way. But I'm not scared to start Cordarrelle this week. I'll leave it at that. Kyle Pitts, you're starting. Drake London, you're absolutely starting. Cleveland's allowing the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers this year, in my mind. In my mind, he's a must start this week. Lock him in.
Yeah, you start him. I don't know how high you can how much you can expect.
Oh yeah, I'm not expecting a 23-point day like he had in week 2.
Right, but give me 14, 15, and we're
100%. He's in your
really good.
He's in your starting lineup. Washington at Dallas. Dallas 3.5-point favorites here. Line's only at 41.5 for this game. Divisional matchup, I could see it though. Carson Wentz. Days of him being a streaming option, they're over, right? Would you stream him this week?
I would stream him this week.
Okay. I think if you're desperate, you could, but I'm also like Carson Wentz had his one Carson Wentz game. Therefore, I'm off him until he shows me he can actually be the quarterback 3 again. Antonio Gibson, what's your level of confidence on a scale of 1, I want a 0 being I want nothing to do with him, I actually cut him this morning, to 10 being he's been in my lineup and I haven't even thought twice about taking him out?
Probably a 4. These Washington coaches are so frustrating because they finally figured him out in week 1 where he got all the receiving work. Then they put him back in the backfield, and then it just is not the same Antonio Gibson.
No.
So I'd say like a 4 because like he could. I mean, he's a goal line or he's the goal line guy, so like he could find the end zone. That's what he's done the past 2 weeks. But there's not much to Gibson besides a goal line carry.
No, 100%. I agree with you there. I'm at like a 5, I think, with Gibson. Just rank them quick, no explanation. How are you ranking the Washington wide receiver trio this week? You have Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson.
Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Terry McLaurin.
You have Terry McLaurin last. I have Terry McLaurin second behind Curtis Samuel.
Maybe I'm saying that just to kind of point out that like people need to kind of sell on Terry, but
sure. I think Terry does better than Jahan this week, though. I'm pretty confident on that. CeeDee Lamb, you're starting, allowing the third most fantasy points to wide receivers and slot wide receivers. CeeDee Lamb's actually run the 19th most routes from the slot this year. Fun fact. You're firing him up. Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. I think you have to start them both. You're starting Zeke.
You're starting Zeke.
I think Pollard is a fine flex play this week.
Pollard is so much like, I mean, Pollard is like if like CEH in fantasy came to life because I mean Pollard is just crazy efficient with his touches. I mean, it was the second straight week where he broke off a 40+ yard run. Like that helps your stat line.
Yeah.
And the craziest thing about the Cowboys game against the Giants, neither running back got receiving work, like at all.
Yeah.
And Gallup's coming back now too. Like, I don't know. I feel like Zeke again. Zeke is the start, and everyone's gonna be like, "What? What are you talking about?" I know what I'm talking about. Give me Zeke.
Give me Zeke. Yeah, I think you can start both this week. Tony Pollard at the flex, I'd be comfortable with. Dalton Schultz, you're starting him if he plays, just because of the premium you paid to have him.
You have to.
Arizona, Carolina, we're going to keep this short and sweet. Kyler, you're starting. James Conner, you're starting. Hollywood Brown, you're starting, correct?
Yes.
Zach Ertz, this team needs him. You start Zach Ertz. He's actually been sneaky good for fantasy. I believe he hasn't scored less than 10 fantasy points all year.
Pretty sure he's the tight end 3 right now.
Or 4. I thought Tyler Conklin was the tight end 3.
Yes, you're right.
Greg Dortch, you willing to flex him this week? I am.
No.
I'm willing to flex Greg Dortch. He's getting this volume, man. It's him and Hollywood, the 2 wide receivers. There's no AJ Green, no Rondale Moore. Like Greg Dortch, I think he's a perfectly fine flex this week.
I think if Rondale Moore misses, then yes, you can flex Greg Dortch.
Fair enough. Christian McCaffrey, you're obviously starting, and Tyler, we could spend so much of the podcast. No, you're out. As a DJ Moore manager, he pleads the fifth.
I muted my mic and my computer.
Muting StreamYard.
Gosh, I've
given him one more
Baker
week.
Mayfield.
I'm giving DJ Moore. I'm giving him grace because of Matt Rule. I don't think I can cut him until Matt Rule is gone. If Matt Rule isn't gone by halfway through the season, I'm cutting DJ Moore. But I think you have to roster him on the pure upside. The man is second in routes run this year. His snap share. His snap share is at 98%. He has been on the field 98% of the time. That is only second to Cooper Kupp, who's run 99. DJ Moore is first in route participation, 100%. So this man is on the. What will it take to get this man the football? Like, are you kidding me, Matt Rule? Baker Mayfield, get this man the football because I have no clue what to do with him in fantasy football right now. He's too talented to cut. He's too talented to cut.
Yeah, stop dinking and dumping to Ian Thomas and Tommy Tremble and Shai Smith. Stop it, okay? It is stupid. Get your playmakers the ball.
But I can't put him in my lineup this week. I can't.
I can't either.
I'm sitting DJ Moore this week. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Yeah,
it boils my blood. Denver at Vegas. We're moving on. Get this. Vegas, 2.5 point favorites. So you know how the fantasy football, Andy, Hall of Fantasy Footballers. He has his like almost upset of the week. I'd probably break his button smashing this right now. I'm Denver. Bounce back game for Denver. I think they get right this week. This is the get right game. Vegas has looked awful. Their defense has looked awful, and the Broncos need a poor defense to get right. Literally, Vegas, third most fantasy points to quarterbacks, 10th most fantasy points to wide receivers, third most fantasy points to running backs. This is the perfect get-right game for Denver, divisional matchup. Blow the Raiders off the football field. Put them into misery, 0-4. Denver, this is your bounce-back game. I am smashing everything Denver this week. I'm starting Russell Wilson. He's probably going to be my start of the week at quarterback. I'm starting Cortland Sutton. I'm starting Jerry Jeudy. I'm starting Javonte Williams. I'm willing to spot start Melvin Gordon in the flex this week. Like, everything Denver Broncos give it to me this week.
Agreed.
Great. Raiders. I'm sitting all Raiders, except for Devontae Adams. Can we leave it at that? And Darren Waller. And Darren Waller I'm playing. That's true. I'm playing Darren Waller. Devontae Adams and Darren Waller are the only two Raiders I'm playing. Josh Jacobs, I'm pivoting off of Josh Jacobs this week. Hunter Renfrow, I'm looking at other options if he even plays. Derek Carr, you're not a streaming option this week. This Denver defense is legit, man.
Yeah, it is fun to watch.
It's fun. Yeah, their defense is fun to watch. New England, Green Bay. Green Bay, 10-point favorites in this game. 10-point favorites. 40.5 is the line. I don't know how the line could be 40.5 and they expect Green Bay to score
30.
25.
Oh, yeah, no, wait.
25 of these points.
Yeah, 25.
That's absurd to me. Are you starting anybody on New England this week? Green Bay's along the 10th most rushing yards, but the 7th fewest fantasy points to running backs. So, like, Ramondre and Damian Harris are about the only two I'm looking at, and I'm not excited to start either of them.
No, Brian Hoyer's going to be the quarterback. Like,
yeah, no, I'm not starting anybody
news.
on New England. Aaron Rodgers, what are you doing with him? New England's allowed the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. I think I'm going to start him this week now that he has Romeo Doubs. And he has Alan Lazard back now. He's going to start getting Robert Tonyan back in a groove here. I'm willing to start Aaron Rodgers this week. Like, he's not like a top of my start list, but like I'm willing to start Aaron Rodgers. I'm not panicked about him like I was last week.
I think here's the thing. I think the way that this offense is set up to function and run, I'm going to be shocked if he hits over 20 this week.
Oh, I don't expect Rodgers to hit 20. But I think he'll be borderline top 12.
Borderline top 12 with 17
starting,
to 18
though.
points.
Yeah. I say that out loud and I realize that's not a good place to be in with Aaron Rodgers.
I would say it's closer to like 15. So like here, no one's going to cut Rodgers, right, because of the name. But if he was cut in your league, he's a streaming option this week.
Sure. Yeah. If you have a choice between, like, in one league, we drafted Dak Prescott and Aaron Rodgers. We're starting Aaron Rodgers, no question, this week. Right. That's just how it is. Aaron Jones, you're starting him because you spent the draft capital on him. New England's allowing the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs, though. A.J. Dillon, you pivoting away from him this week. I'm starting him in most of my leagues because I don't have many other good options. I'm not starting Rashad Penny over A.J. Dillon this week, even though I think Rashad Penny's a fine start this week.
No, I think you fire up A.J. Dillon this week.
Yep, I would agree. Romeo Doubs, Alan Lazard, do you have any interest there? New England allowing the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers. I have some interest in Doubs. I'm not excited to start him, though.
I think it's going to be as simple as Alan Lazard is going to be the red zone guy, right? And Romeo Doubs is going to be the volume guy going up the field.
Yep.
I just don't think...
Oh.
Sorry. I just think... I don't know. Belichick does a great job with wide receivers. Like, that's just matter of the fact.
Yep, he does. I agree. Kansas City, Tampa Bay, we got 2 more games here. We're going to fly through them. Patrick Mahomes is a start. Travis Kelce is a start. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Sit. All caps. Tampa Bay's only allowed 34 total fantasy points to running backs this year. That is the fewest in the NFL. Sit Clyde Edwards-Helaire, please. I am begging you to sit Clyde Edwards-Helaire this week. If you don't sell high on him now, you're never going to. No interest in Chiefs wide receivers.
Juju
I have no
maybe,
interest.
but no.
No, not against Tampa. Tom Brady. You have any interest in starting him? Mostly because you have to, probably.
I mean, he gets Mike Evans back.
Yep.
And Chris Godwin's practicing again. Julio Jones should be good to go. If not, Russell Gage. He targeted Russell Gage without end against the Packers.
Right.
So he's got weapons. It's just a matter of can the offensive line, keep him upright.
Yep, most definitely. I think you can start Brady this week. That's fine. Leonard Fournette, you're obviously starting. Kansas City's allowing the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers. Mike Evans, you're obviously starting. And he's really the only Bucs wide receiver you're interested in playing this week.
I like Russell Gage a little bit, but not like, when we were going through like Tyler Lockett or this player, like Russell Gage is like at the bottom of that list.
Yep, I definitely agree. Rams at the 49ers. 49ers 1.5 favorites here, 42.5 on FanDuel Sportsbook. Matthew Stafford. How do you feel about starting him this week? Would you rather start Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers?
Matthew Pafford.
Is that what I said?
No. That's just what he says in the Little Caesars commercial.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I'm like, huh? That's not what I said, was it? Goodness. I know I stutter every once in a while, but you pivoting away.
Yeah, the Rams just look off this year. They do.
And San Francisco's allowing the second fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. So I'm not excited to start Stafford in any capacity. Cam Akers. You sitting him this week against San Francisco?
Yes.
Cooper Kupp, you're starting. Allen Robinson. I think you have to sit Allen Robinson this week.
I just don't understand.
I'm saying this so quietly because I hate this. This was supposed to be perfect for Allen Robinson. It was supposed to be so perfect, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. I think you have to sit him this week. Deebo Samuel. We're going to pivot before I cry about my flag plant. Deebo Samuel. You're starting him. Brandon Ayuk. I have a ton of interest in Brandon Ayuk this week. I think you should fire him up. I would start Brandon Ayuk over Adam Thielen this week to bring back a name from earlier in the episode. Rams are allowing the second most fantasy points to wide receivers this year. Caught a touchdown last week. I'm absolutely starting Brandon Ayuk if I have him this week. Jeff Wilson. How do you feel about Jeff Wilson? I'm not excited to start him.
Nope. Sitting.
I agree. Rams allowing the third fewest fantasy points to running backs this year. And George Kittle, you are starting him this week. Tyler, anything we missed? Any closing thoughts from you as we wrap up previewing week 4 here? Oh, that I garnered a reaction.
So I'm going through PrizePicks right now, and Kirk Cousins' passing yard line is at 260. Hit the over.
We'll talk more about that on Friday. Hopefully,
that's a little preview of what's to come.
That's a little preview of Stardom Saturday. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. Lucas and Tyler signing off here. Matt Lucas Wenzel on Twitter. Tyler_Plath for Tyler. FF Fellas on Twitter for our main account of the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. Tyler and I will be back on Saturday to preview our starts of the week and some player props over on PrizePicks. We will see you all then. A couple Stooges being dudes here. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you then. Deuces.